The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Paranormal Concept right here on Parasearch UK Radio with your host, Paul Rook.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Paranormal Concept Show. It's 9 o'clock on the 25th of... do you know what? I can never remember the month. July, isn't it? Yeah, July. It is. Welcome to everybody joining me in the chat room tonight. It's going to be an absolutely amazing show. If there's any questions that you want to pose to a special guest, please put them in the chat room and we will announce them and ask our guest. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to Kerry Greenaway, my co-host for this evening. Hello, Kerry.
Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, have you had a good week?
I've had a great week, thank you. It's been really interesting this week.
Yeah, really? What have you been up to? Anything good?
I went badminton tonight. First time in like years. I've worked out I'm already Olympic standard. Awesome. There is getting no better. I mastered the picking the shuttlecock up off the floor beautifully. That's all I can say.
Okay, so the kids won then, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and my other special guest for tonight is Mr. David Parry. Hello, David.
Hi, both. How can I follow a shuttlecock comment? My God. Deeply impressed and a great honour to be here, both of you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, to be honest. I've heard some great things about you, to be fair, from all the Paracons and things you've been taking part in. Now, you're one of the top people for Gnosticism. Is that correct?
Dun 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 dun. I am a bishop of the Valentinian Gnostic Church. I should stress I'm also a liberal Catholic priest. I see no contradiction between the two, but that's a long story in itself. Okay. I was actually ordained in a monastery in Italy a couple of years ago in a rather spectacular ceremony. And I am the representative of Valentinian Gnosticism to the UK. So it's quite an involved and long story.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been trying to get my head around Gnosticism pretty much all day, and I mean, a few people have tried to explain it to me, but I just can't grasp the concept. So, can you tell me where I mean, I know that it's sort of I've been told that it predates Christianity.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How did it come about?
Well, you've been struggling with it all day, Paul. I've been struggling with it for 20 years. So between all of us this evening, we might actually get somewhere. You never know.
Absolutely. Teach me about Gnosticism.
Well, gosh. Right, well, pull up a chair and let's see what happens. As I was saying to Kerry off air a minute ago, you could say it's the original religion of the human. Could say. Looking at the earliest times, and we're going back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, the idea was that a human being had something of the divine, had a spirit, had a soul, had a type of consciousness within themselves that could connect directly with the cosmos. And for certain reasons, that had been dulled or that connection had been weakened. But you could say, and some people have said, like Colin Wilson, the writer, that, that's the original spiritual striving, becoming more, discovering that consciousness within yourself and learning how to expand as a person in mind and body and spirit. Now, as time went on, Gnosticism, to my mind, got involved with all the different religions, and quite rightly, why not? I would claim, for a number of reasons, it took a very special form when it got to Christianity. But certainly that's a much later thing, and you're looking at schools of thought slowly arising, and Gnostics were accused of everything under the sun at one point. Because technically it's not a belief system. You believe whatever you want to. Technically, it's a way of, as I say, establishing a direct system of communication with the cosmos yourself. So you do that, and you're responsible for it. But so when we get to recorded history, you see Gnostic movements, Gnostic schools within all the religions, and certainly in the Western world, you're looking at the 1st and 2nd century of the Christian era, when it starts becoming codified and they start talking about different beliefs which are seen as keys to understanding yourself, understanding the spirit. And then sort of it goes on from there. But as I say, for centuries, we were public enemy number one. We were always the first people to be burnt. And it's only recently that people are beginning to say to themselves, well, maybe it's safe now to start exploring, inner space, inner truth, and start exploring what past Gnostics said, to see if we can understand where they were going. So I hope that makes it a bit more comprehensible. If not, you can both shout at me now. There we are.
We don't do shouting.
No.
Oh, good.
Oh, well, if it makes you happy, I'll shout at you a bit.
Yeah, Kerry's very good at that. So with my upbringing, I was brought up in the Church of England Christianity faith, and for me, when I was doing one of these Christian courses, they said to me, what do you believe God is? Do you believe that he's a little man sitting on a white cloud or something else? And I've always said that I envisage him being just energy that lives in the cosmos somewhere. And when we die, our energy or our soul, whatever way you want to look at it, will just go up to join that energy. Is that the same?
That sounds like Gnosticism to me.
Really? Okay. I was going to say, so that's sort of my interpretation of my Christian faith, and so that is pretty much the same.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between us, if we're looking at Christianity, the difference between our view and most of the other Christian churches, and as I say, I'm involved with them, so I'm not having a pop, I'm not having a go, is that they would say it's faith. It's faith that saves you. It's faith in a group of ideas, a group of beliefs that lead you somewhere. And that's good. And for lots of people, it works. And good luck to them. Bless them. Why not?
Yeah.
But we've always said there's a way to experience these things. There are techniques that you can use, meditation, depth prayer, that you can use to directly experience these things while you're still alive. So you can see why we were public enemy number one, at certain points in history, particularly medieval Europe. I mean, because the structure of the time was you had a top-down pyramid. You had the emperor at the top, you had the pope at the top, and no, I'm not having a go at the pope. And that was the guy that was in charge. The buck stopped there, and everybody fitted in to a hierarchy. So if you go around saying, by the way, Popey baby, I've got the same link that you have to the cosmos, obviously that's going to cause trouble. But as I say, we're hoping nowadays people are mature enough and sober enough. I think shows like this are wonderful. It shows that ordinary people are looking for answers. And if that's the case, maybe it's time for Gnosticism to be a bit braver and say we're still here and we're still looking.
Yeah, I mean when we done these courses and things, although it was done at Church of England, they were obviously trying to promote their faith, but the vicar was quite open minded to the whole evolution theory as well.
Yeah.
It was almost like, you know, God was sitting there playing his chemistry set and bang, here we are. You know, it sort of, and he was quite open to those sort of theories, and he was quite respectful of other religions as well. And you know, another thing he used to say was like, you've got a big mountain and God's sitting at the top. Whatever you believe God is, they're sitting at the top, and all these other religions are paths all the way up to the top of the mountain. So whatever path you take, as long as you lead a good life and, you know, a morally right one to your particular faith, you're eventually going to get up to the top. And it doesn't matter whether you go halfway up your path and then switch to another one. You're going to get to the same place eventually anyway. And I quite like that analogy.
How can anyone fault? Yeah, that's a good guy with a good open-minded attitude. Who can fault that? Really good stuff.
Yeah, but I'm still struggling with Gnosticism. Like, I just don't.
You know, I mean, you said it yourself. I mean, what we're saying is that you believe what you want, but we can offer you a series of techniques whereby you can find the divine energy in you now. And it needn't be post-mortem, it needn't be after death. You can start working with that inside yourself now. And you know, there are methods whereby you can do that. And our church would claim that, yes, we still have access to them. I mean, the Valentinian church goes back to the 2nd century. It was started by a man called Valentinius. He was going to be Pope. I notice in all the books it says he was going to be Bishop of Rome. That's being very churlish. Bishop of Rome means Pope. So he was going to be Pope. And he came to Rome, and it's at the time, unfortunately for him, that money and power was beginning to enter the church. You know, before that, they'd been sort of quite revolutionary, laid-back communities of people looking for better ways of living. And it was very, very fluid. It embraced everything that was positive. But as I say, at the end of the 2nd century, towards the end of the 2nd century, you know, Christianity generally is trying to become the state religion of these areas, these countries. And it's when the power brokers start muscling their way in. So he arrived at the wrong time. He was stabbed in the back by his political enemies. I mean, so he didn't get elected Pope. For my money, you know, the measure of the man, because he still thought it was all about the mystery schools. He thought it was all about prayer and meditation and what we would call yoga. They had their own systems of it. They'd have called it something else. For him, it was all about those things. And he started a school in Rome itself, a very dangerous move, of course, to say, look, you know, if you people want to go off and talk about money and power, okay, that's where you are in your evolutionary stage at the moment on the evolutionary ladder, but it's not about that. And I am staying here to help guide those people who want to look inside themselves. Now, that was incredibly brave. What happened later, he got declared as a heretic. He was mentioned as a heretic, and he was thrown out of the church after he was dead, I believe. But, you know, that the measure of the man is he wouldn't back down, and he thought it was all about spiritual, soul, energy truth, not about the truth of politics and power and dominating the other people. So you could say that we're the stream within Christianity that's always said, and we have a hierarchy, you know, we have priests, we have bishops, but, you know, what are they meant to be? They're meant to be guides for other people's development. They're not meant to be telling them what to believe or what to do or how to think, because that's up to you.
Okay, so it's almost like that you've got the guides there, but we have to come to you to want to learn more.
Well, I mean, you know, I think it's everywhere. I think it's everywhere. You know, if you Spiritualism's run in my family for generations. I class myself basically as a spiritualist underneath everything. These truths can be accessed anywhere. They're in Buddhism, they're in Islam, they're in Judaism, they're everywhere. But we would say, like if you want to become an athlete, some people can do it on their own, great. But it takes longer, so why not go to a martial artist, a guru, a sensei, and learn the techniques more quickly? If he's telling you what to think, he's not. If he's telling you what to think, he's not the real thing anyway. But there's no point pretending that there aren't experts. There aren't people, and I wouldn't necessarily claim to be one myself. There aren't people that can help you along the way. That's the idea of a teacher in a school. Or a lecturer in a university. Can you learn all those things yourself, given enough time? Of course you can. But the idea is you go to school or you go to university, so the whole process is speeded up. And it's not for the guy in front of the class, it's for you. That's why it's being done. So, we would say spirituality is roughly the same thing. It's a mutual empowerment. We find the kingdom of heaven within you, as Jesus said. And that was a Gnostic claim. I mean, my heavens, he was saying Gnostic things all the time. And the Gospel of John is pure Gnosticism. How it stayed in the Bible is completely beyond me. But the point is it did, and it's not going away, and they can't tell us to go away either.
Yeah. Okay. Kerry, is there any questions in the chat room yet?
Oh, it's on fire already.
Really?
Okay, first question was, what does David think of the current publicity of Gnosticism through its connection with the Cathars and its emergence into popular culture, i.e. books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and novels like The Da Vinci Code?
I wish I'd written The Da Vinci Code because I'd be in a very different tax bracket. Hated the film, loved the book, hated the film, loved the book.
Yeah.
I actually knew Michael Bajan, one of the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail. They were clever people. Have they solved anything? I don't think so, but that's a clever book. So yeah, good luck to them. The Cathars, oh my God, now that opens up a whole mare's nest. That's a can of worms. Mystics, Gnostic mystics, back in France a long time ago, the Roman Catholic Church declared war on them. People, when they think of the Crusades, they always think of people with large red crosses running off to the Middle East. Actually, there were crusades inside Europe. If the Pope, and I'm not having a go at the Pope, if the Catholic hierarchy decided you were a problem, you would suddenly find a load of crusaders on your doorstep trying to, give you black eyes and twist your arm. So the Cathars are a very sad example of a group of very, very good people indeed. I mean, their name effectively means good people, good men, who had the cheek to say that you're all children of God. Every woman, every man, every child is a child of God. And what we're going to do is educate. They set schools up everywhere. What we're going to do is heal. They set up hospitals everywhere. So obviously they were swines. So the Roman army turned up, in other words, the papal army, the army of the Pope. How far can human beings sink? One of the generals of this army said to the Pope's envoy, "Sir, this is in their families. This tradition, this view is in the families of everybody who lives in this region, which most people agree is the French region called Languedoc. What shall we do? We don't know who's a Cathar and who is not." To which the man representing the Pope said, "Oh, that's okay. Kill them all. God will know his own." So, when you're dealing with attitudes like that, it's hard to know what to say. If you want a bit of a mystery, what the Pope seemed, or at least the envoy was afraid of, is that there were ancient legends that said Jesus Christ himself had actually written one book, and it was called the Book of Love. And of course, the Cathars were meant to have that book. So actually what the church might have been trying to do, if it believed those stories, was get hold of that book and either hide it away if it said something different to them, or just destroy it. In any sense, they destroyed the Cathars. A terrible, terrible, terrible view of human nature at that particular time. Things are better now, I'm hoping. Gnosticism in modern culture, yeah, why not? I mean, this is not an age of faith. This is an age of knowledge. Whether anybody likes it or not. This is an age of science. This is an age of psychology. This is an age when people are asking questions. So the whole time, the whole zeitgeist is Gnostic. Use science. If you want to put it bluntly, it's the religion of knowledge. Knowledge will set you free. If you know what you are, if you know what your limitations are, if you can find answers to your own problems, that is good. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. So a Gnostic feels very, very at home in the 21st century.
It's about taking responsibility for your own actions and your own beliefs, isn't it?
Kerry, that's it. That's 100%. That's a pure Gnostic answer. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Ashley Nibb, which I believe you know and have met before now, has asked, does David believe that belief is only halfway there and that we should be living our beliefs rather than just expressing our alignment with them?
Well, as I say, Gnosticism has nothing to do with belief. Gnosticism is a method of experiencing the spirit. So I see it directly aligned to spiritualism. I mean, for me, as I said a minute ago, that's directly for me, that's the bottom line. And it makes me really sad because I do a lot of traveling. I don't know if you know that. And spiritualism in other countries makes what we do here look really pathetic, to be honest. If in some cultures it's very, very evolved, and it puts us in our place. It's a part of everyday life. It's just how we think. I mean, Ashley is a good friend of mine. It's always good to explore your beliefs because those beliefs have come from somewhere. They've come from a tradition. They've come from people who are probably struggling with questions like, what does it all mean? Where are we going? Are we taking responsibility? Is there life after death? Is there a God? So, those beliefs have probably come from all that. Religion gets a bad press these days. It gets a bad rap, and it's itself to blame. It's itself to blame. But the point is, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. All those things arose for reasons. So let's start asking what the reasons are. The reasons are people asking questions about themselves and about the universe. But that's Gnosticism. That's Gnosticism. The difference being that Gnostics always said those questions are vital to you being a human being. Don't pretend they're not there. Don't suppress them. They're vital. The minute a Gnostic priest hears from somebody, is there a God or not? We love that. Because you're asking a real question. Mm-hmm. You're not on your knees to something you don't understand. That's horrible. That's hopeless.
You're not having blind faith, are you? You're not just having blind faith. You're actually questioning your faith. You're questioning your belief systems, and you're trying to learn and progress yourself through that process.
Oh, I'm kidnapping you. You're obviously a Gnostic. You're a Gnostic, young lady. Well, yeah, I mean, we're like Buddhists. So you have a set of doctrines. But what any good Buddhist Lama, any good Buddhist monk will say is come and test it out. Believe what you want, test it out, and we're the same. I mean, certain people would have said, indeed, we're the Buddhists of the West, and I think that's a fair enough comment.
Excellent. Okay, I have a question, if you don't mind.
No, you go for it.
No, okay. You're becoming a priestess, young lady. Don't worry, I'm taking your details.
I'm quite flattered. I'm actually blushing. Okay, so right at the beginning of our conversation, you started with it's about expanding your consciousness and forming a direct system of communication with the cosmos. And then you went on to say about the age of knowledge and that kind of thing. Now, one of the main theories out there at this point in time is the Jungian theory about the unconscious collective. Is that part of this?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Jung was fascinated by Gnosticism. He wrote books on it. I'm actually one of the irregular participants at Jung Club London. I mean, he's such an interesting guy. I mean, why is what he's saying different from a priest although most priests, not every priest, because of course he was a busy doctor. He went on to be a psychiatrist. He could actually heal people that Freud could not heal. Freud gets a bad press nowadays. Did you know Freud was actually very interested in telepathy and thought transference and was absolutely convinced it was true? They tend to hide that nowadays, but it's in his diaries. But Jung could actually cure patients that Freud could not. Now that means we're looking at somebody very, very skilled indeed. For him, he talks about lots of different types of unconscious. There's the subconscious mind, all that sort of comes from him, really, where we sort of half know what we're thinking and what we're experiencing, and maybe it's from our parents or from our teachers, but we half know that. Then there's the collective unconscious, which is sort of the knowledge of our species. That weird things used to happen in Jung's consulting room. Very educated people, very educated ladies would turn up. And sometimes they'd be completely rational with him, and he couldn't do anything. So he'd say, well, tell me about your dreams. What about your dreams? And then weird stuff would start happening. There was a guy actually that goes slightly further than him called Karras, who talks about the universal unconsciousness. Now all of that strikes me as Gnostic, that particularly, that we're not just connected to each other, but somehow we're connected to the entire universe. That's when it starts getting mind-blowing, and you think, wow, where do we go from there? But Jung, as I say, when he was a young explorer of the mind, started writing a lot about Gnosticism. Mm-hmm. He even wrote a very strange book called Septem Sermonis ad Mortuos, the Seven Sermons of the Dead. It started when a load of psychic stuff was kicking off in his house. He couldn't concentrate. Bookcases were wobbling, tables were moving about, doors were closing themselves. He couldn't stop it. And he noticed every time he picked up his pen, what would we call it in spiritualism, automatic writing, every time he picked up his pen, all this stuff flowed out of him. And he'd test it. He'd put his pen down, and all the psychic stuff would kick off again. Noises, screams, weird stuff. Then he'd pick the pen up, and it would all stop. Everything balanced, the atmosphere balanced in his house by the time he got to the end of the book. Now, if that's not Gnosticism, I don't know what is.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's a wow. That's a wow.
Yeah, that is. There's so much reading I need to do. So where you go from the collective unconscious, there's the next level up onto the universal unconscious. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Jung spent most of his life talking about the collective unconscious. That's how we're all linked as human beings, the species. But there was a guy writing slightly before him that both Freud and Jung seem to have read, a man called Karras, who says, and he's one of the founding fathers of modern psychology, modern psychotherapy. And he's saying, but look, I think there's something like that. But I also think there's, something even deeper than the collective unconscious, which he called the universal unconscious, that somehow I can connect with events happening the other side of the universe because the same energy that's in me is also there in those things. And Karras, I've not done enough research on him myself. I need to do that. I've done a bit, but not as much as I'd like. He was plagued by psychic stuff for years on end, and he would just blot it out of his mind and sit down and write his work. And, again, he was a physician of the mind, and, he was very disciplined. But, you're dealing with completely mind-blowing material there. Remember, I think, you see, this is the sort of stuff the Cathars were talking about, which is why they were public enemy number one, and why Gnosticism, to an extent, still remains public enemy number one. I've got friends over in France where it's actually much stronger than in Britain. And they've recently had a conference called Helios. And there's a dear friend of mine, Mother Amanda, who's in the Mary Magdalene line of mystics. And they're on my Facebook timeline. Find me on Facebook, people. Find me on Facebook. She's wearing these gorgeous gorgeous red robes. I mean, one must remember what Mary Magdalene actually was, before she became this enlightened being. But there's a mystery there. So she's wearing all these spectacular red robes and doing Christian mysteries, which were, initiated by women from the beginning. I mean, in Gnosticism, to change tack a little, women have never been second place. Women have always been equal. And there was always part of our tradition that said Mary Magdalene was the favourite disciple, the main disciple of Jesus Christ himself. There is even a Gnostic gospel. They were all rejected. Some of them were actually in the Bible, then they were thrown out. There's a long story. But they were all rejected by the early church for the reason, you didn't need a hierarchy. Technically, you didn't need a priest, and certainly you didn't need a priest to tell you what to think. You needed a priest to tell you how to do these things. There was a Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which seems to be completely genuine, whereby she's giving her side of the story, and those mysteries were celebrated by women from the beginning. So, can you imagine in the Middle Ages when, what did a woman do? Go home and do the cooking, love. Keep out of man's stuff. We were completely against that in every single century. So again, it made us a problem. It made us an issue. It made us the type of groups that mainstream wanted to attack. Oh dear, am I going too far?
No, I think
No.
Even though, Gnosticism was attacked, I'm still picking up that some of the things you say resonate in other cultures and religions. I read a bit earlier on Gnosticism about the belief that there was more than one realm. There was almost like 7, I think they mentioned.
Yeah.
And that to me sort of resonates with Norse gods and the Vikings religion, and then you've got little bits and pieces coming out that resonate with Christianity, and you've got Judaism in there, and just other there's just loads of little bits and pieces that it's almost like they've taken the Gnosticism apart and thought, I like that, I'll have that, we'll make up our own religion now, and then we'll just discard the rest, and it's a shame, really. It does make sense. Yeah. I mean, even the ancient Egyptians, they had, they loved looking at the stars, and I believe, they tried to do star maps and things like that with the pyramids, because they lined them up with Orion's belt, or I think it was something like that. So they all had that fascination with the stars, and again, that could come from the Gnosticism.
Well, remember, I see Gnosticism everywhere. I was involved a few years ago with heathens. I'm actually a heathen Godi as well, because I'm convinced. I went looking for ancestors and I found them. Recently, I've been involved with Wicca. And what I see is the same story everywhere, the same type of spiritualism, where Gnosticism was in those things too, those faiths, those religions. And don't forget, they've been attacked as well. You have to leave Europe. You have to go to the Far East, to the Buddhists, to the Taoists, to the Zen people, they're saying exactly what we're saying, but they were left alone. No one thought that was a threat because they had a different society. So, and what happened? They gave birth to the types of societies that have material problems sometimes, but in many ways are so far ahead of us. Japan, it's one of the most technological societies in the world. It has no trouble with artificial intelligence. It has no trouble with robotics, and it's pioneering those things. So, where does it get that attitude from? Zen? Zen wouldn't have a problem with that. But hey, Zen is another example of Gnosticism. Yeah. Because we believe in knowledge, we believe in that energy. Do your thing. Don't hold back. Don't be scared. Explore. Do what you're meant to do.
Sounds good. I'm sold.
Tell me at some point, you've got a trident in your eye. Paul, you've got this wonderful sort of trident, three fork. You've got to tell me that at some point. That is so impressive.
Okay. Yeah, it's the Trident is part of my company, Trident Paranormal, and we formed the company with 3 partners, so that's hence why the Trident. And I just I mean Trident, you get Trident everywhere now.
Yeah.
It's even on the side of missiles, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
should we take a quick break and then come back after the break and continue?
Yep, I think that's a very good idea. We shall
gather our thoughts.
Yep, we will be back shortly after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
And welcome back. We've got that was Harry Price, the absolutely wonderful advert that he done us, and we're talking with David Parry, all about Gnosticism. So, Kerry, any more questions from the chat room?
Well, Andy Mercer has asked, have you read Jung's The Red Book?
Yeah, yes I have.
And what did you make of that?
Well, I mean, it's all this. I mean, he didn't keep it repressed, and neither did the Young Society. I mean, it was gathered over the years. You know, it's him as mystic, it's him as artist, it's him as Gnostic. So yeah, I mean, it's his statement about why he thought the way he did. And, you know, what he's trying to do with that. So I've read the 7 sermons more than that. But yeah, I've had a look at the Red Book. And, yeah, extraordinary material. Extraordinary.
Okay. Now, I have another question. I could probably talk to you all night, David.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Before we came on air, we was discussing how it's almost like in this new age world that, you know, is resurging again, and particularly in the UK. I mean, we've talked about other cultures around the world living that way of life, but in the UK it's a very new agey thing. It's very fashionista at the moment. So do you know, and a lot of what the new age is sounds very Gnostic to me. You know, what you're saying about your about Gnosticism, almost like sound bites you get on memes. Do you know what I mean? On Facebook a lot of the time, you know, take responsibility for yourself, you know, work on yourself, you know, all that sort of thing. So do you think that people are just speaking this without actually living this? Do you think that they're not actually really actually doing what the work that you need to do on the whole?
God. I mean, the priest bit of me is meant to be saying, yes, the swines, why aren't they working hard? You know, the human bit of me thinks, oh my heavens, I mean, we all lead such tough lives nowadays. Certainly the New Age is linked with Gnosticism. I think there's no way around that. You know, and I mean, I went to the Findhorn Foundation, the Findhorn community, This Will Age Me, in 1978. When they were really just starting out. They just brought a castle at that particular time. And that was a New Age community started by Peter and Eileen Caddy. I had an incredible time there. I mean, they were genuinely trying to work hard to find new ways of living. Excuse me. And, you know, actually live the life, not just talk about it. But, you know, I think we can all be too hard on each other. You know, it's nice if somebody is being a bit of a fashionista than not being it. You know, it's nice if they're talking about New Age stuff rather than not talking about it. Because I think sooner or later, you know, that says something about them and theirs. Maybe it's not a full-blown quest. Maybe it's not a full-blown journey at that time. But maybe it will become that later. You know, why am I saying that? I never met Peter Caddy, the founder of Findhorn. I did meet his wife, Eileen. She struck me as a normal middle-class woman. I mean, you know, she had a bit of a blue rinse. She had a pearl necklace. And there's no way under the sun you would have thought that's a practicing mystic. You know, I mean, if you read The Magic of Findhorn, a remarkable book, or any of the books by David Spangler about his time at Findhorn, you know, I mean, Peter had just left the Air Force, RAF, and he was into Alice Bailey, and I mean, one of the founders of the modern New Age movement, a very powerful medium. Of course, people tend to forget that about her. That's what she did, and he felt he was meant to do something, but he couldn't quite work out what. Eileen, his wife, wasn't really getting into the spirit at that point, but thought, right, okay, you know, he's really knowledgeable. Let's go and do this crazy thing. Like, I mean, they had no money anyway. You know, move into a caravan park, and she started channeling, as we'd call it nowadays. They moved in with a third friend, Dorothy McLean, who was a bit of a nature mystic. And Eileen was being told, we will show you we're helping you by what they called the Devas. Now, the Devas are nature spirits. They belong to the Devic world. And, you know, what suddenly started happening, nature got out of control. They had their own garden effectively in Findhorn Bay, which was sand. Nothing should grow on it. And all of a sudden, they were getting gigantic potatoes and titanic broccoli that was completely bigger and misshapen than anything possible. Locals started to notice it. The BBC noticed it. The Soil Association noticed it. No one could work out what was going on. And, you know, and to look at her, you'd think, well, all this started where they'd be in a caravan and she'd go to the local loo to get a bit of peace and quiet so she could do some channeling. You know, so whenever I hear fashionista and whenever I hear, you know, is this just a sort of symptom of modern life, I tend to think good, you know, because there are lots of people not doing it, and I prefer them to be playing around with those ideas than not playing around with them. So, you know, I hope that sort of makes sense.
It does, because like I say, you know, particularly in this day and age of social media, a lot of these ideas and these thought patterns are actually being put out in, you know, memes. You see them being shared time and time again. But they're planting the seeds of ideas. And if you can take those seeds and actually, you know, absorb those and actually process those, then it starts you on a journey that you may not, like you said, go down before. So, you know, I actually think it's quite a positive thing. And some people say they hate these positive affirmations and these things that are going out like this. But I'm with you on this. I think they're a positive thing. I think it starts a tiny thought pattern that can lead you on into thinking about things in a different way and actually, you know, reviewing things in that way. So if it leads you down to ask questions about preconceived or pre-learned ideas or belief systems or whatever way you want to call it, then that's surely a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful. You know, one of the things I learned from Alice Bailey, I'm not sure whether I believe in reincarnation or not. I think there's something, you know, so many people in the Far East believe. So I'm not willing to write that off. You know, it's just a common belief in India. It's a common belief across China and Japan. Here it's not, but there it is, and they outgun us. There's loads more of them than us. Alice Bailey would say things like, you know, we're all at different spiritual levels. Why are you judging people? You know, are you doing what's appropriate for where you are, your spiritual level? Worry about that. Don't worry about all these other people. And that's really, I think, what the priesthood should have been saying from the beginning, not telling people what to think and what to do. I mean, that's for me, that's wrong. I see nothing but positive energies in modern times, and I know that may sound a bit old with some of the news from around the planet, but you know, I see lots of very, very good things. Even the psychic community, the paranormal community. You know, we've got to remember 100 years ago, we'd have all been put in jail.
Very
you know,
true.
it's positive that it's all happening and coming out into the open now.
And people are starting to work together more in all of these fields. It used to be like, you know, in the psychic world, it would be like one medium just doing her thing or his thing, but you're now finding people are working together and actually working together in a lot more positive way than has happened before. It's very slow, but it's starting to build momentum. Now, we have had another question into the chat room, again by Ashley. Does David think it's possible to actuate ideas into reality through some kind of continued practiced process?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do. And one of the people I read years back, a remarkable woman called Madame Alexandra David Neal, who was the first French, I believe she was French, anthropologist into Tibet. You know, that was at a time, 1800s, when women just didn't do stuff like that, and no Westerner had been there. And she starts talking about the secret mind sciences of the Tibetans. And they're called tulpas. The Tibetans think this energy that Paul was talking about, you know, it's working on lots of different levels at the same time, but it's the same energy. There's a spiritual level, there's a mental level, there's an emotional level, there's a physical level. And what the lamas, what the Buddhists were saying to her was sometimes there are ways that you can take this energy from a high spiritual level, bring it down through a mental level, through an emotional level, into this world. And she tried it. She kept visualizing. That's a very powerful technique. Mm-hmm. Visualizing a Buddhist monk that wasn't there. And he was short and fat and friendly, because that was her ideal of a Buddhist monk. Then, strangely, after she'd been doing it for about 6 months, people started seeing it sometimes, because she'd been following the mind science that she'd been taught. You know, and it was there and it was gone again, but people started seeing it. But then she noticed it was getting a life of its own, and it was getting taller and thinner and more malevolent. And she thought, oh my God, it's trying to break free. Whatever I've done is trying to break free of what I'm doing. And it took her another 6 months to dissolve it. Aleister Crowley, not a good boy, a fascinating boy, but not a good boy, would also do experiments like that in the middle of London, where he'd try and not only work with elementals, very dangerous undertakings, but he'd also try and create them from this divine energy behind everything. And, you know, there are certain places in London which I would have great trouble going into because he never bothered to dissolve them. And they have a reputation. About that, I don't want to talk at the minute, but if you ever ask me back, I will. There we are. There's a bribe.
Oh, that's a bribe and a half, isn't it?
Okay, so what are you doing next week?
So going on that thought that you can actually create something from your mind yourself, can somebody else dissolve that thought pattern?
Yes, but it takes twice as long, according to the Tibetan teachers that David Neal had. Yes, they can, but these things, when they start taking off on their own lives, of course, they become aware, and they know when people are doing that. So the originator of the idea can do it more effectively and quickly, but other people can do it, like an exorcism, but it takes twice as long. A dear friend of mine who's a Sufi, believe it or not, has asked me to hold an exorcism later this year. I have done work like that before, but not often, because he believes he's being plagued by a jinn at the minute.
All right.
That is, I mean, he's a very, very well-known academic. Therefore, I better not say his name without permission. Very, very clever man indeed. And things happen around his place. I mean, he was showing me the last time I met him an ordinary cup. It looked like something from Woolworths. And he said, look at that. What do you make of that? And it was an ordinary cup from Woolworths. And he said, do you know that is an ancient Chinese, classically designed cup, and it's worth thousands of pounds, and I didn't know what to say. You know, can you see all the signs inside, all the decoration? There was nothing there. You know, can you see all the colours? It's pre-Ming, and I didn't know what to say at all. And he said, look, I know what you're thinking. It's an ordinary cup. What the jinn does is it affects the material world around me to mock me, because it's trying to show that I will not go away and I can't be pushed away. So we're planning an exorcism, a rite of exorcism at the end of this year to see if we can dispel it. So, young Kerry, I will let you know. I will let you know if it's a tulpa, if it's a thought form, or if it's something from the realm of the jinn. Very difficult to get rid of for Western people.
Yeah, I would love to know about that. I'd love to see for you to tell me about the progress of that. Because if it's linked to this guy, this academic, surely the energy to disperse should come from him.
He feels completely out of his depth.
Okay.
It seems to take energy from his frustration. It seems to want to put him into negative states of mind, negative emotional states. And it seems to almost be feeding on that to generate something, maybe to keep itself going. And he feels that it's succeeding at the minute. So I confess I've dipped my toe in the water. I confess that.
Mm. So do we then go back to taking responsibility for yourself and your actions and, working on that yourself? He knows it's having this effect on him, so he then has to take that responsibility and not allow it to affect him. Is where we're linking into the Gnostic perspective, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, look, Kerry, I mean, there's no escape from that. Bloody take responsibility. There's no escape from that. But I do think, if someone's much more powerful than you, which can happen sometimes, and people are, if they lack caution, my worry about the whole paranormal community is sometimes they want to go into the deep end of the swimming pool without making sure they can swim. And that's one of the reasons I very, very rarely go on investigations or attend seances. I mean, I've done it in the past, but nowadays I'd be much more cautious because, sometimes you're dealing with things that simply outgun you. And I think he feels that that's happening in his particular case. And it's hard to know what to say. I mean, he's a good, decent guy.
I can understand that, because if to begin with, if he had the confidence to, say, for example, manifest that energy, he thought he could deal with it, and then because it's feeding off him, he's basically knocking his confidence in another way of putting it, and now he doubts that he can get rid of himself.
Yeah, look, you've hit it squarely on the head. That's a bullseye. What it's trying to do is wear him down,
and that's what it's done.
And that's what it's doing. And from a very confident man, and obviously interested in mysticism and that sort of stuff. From a very confident man, he's a bit shakier than he was even 12 months ago. And you think, my God, it's winning. So we're going to attempt quite a potent exorcism, as I say, when we get to the autumn.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, goodness, there's so many concepts involved in this that I never thought we would sort of touch on. Now, one thing I did notice when I was looking into Gnosticism is there is a duality in it, whereas it accepts the flawedness, and that's the side of it you work on to achieve your transcending into the universal. Did I get that right?
Well, I mean, some of the schools of Gnosticism do say that. I mean, what they mean is, that this world isn't perfect. The material world, people can get ill, they can get sick. So it's not perfect. The material world isn't perfect, but the spiritual world is perfect. And there's some sort of grating between the two worlds. Should they be in a harmony? Should they be working together? Yes, but they're not. And some Gnostic schools went into, why aren't they a great deal? My own particular school wouldn't really go down that route. Certainly, if you're looking at a guy called Basilides, who was one of the near contemporaries of Valentinius, he was a dualist. So he thought you just had to escape the material world. Yabu sucks. Valentinius uses the language of duality, but he actually doesn't believe it. He's more like all of us. There's one divine energy, and it takes many forms, and it's on many levels, and that's really what you've got to work with. Stop trying to take the easy route out and escape. You've got to do the work here and now. So, Kerry, we're back to responsibility again. Personal responsibility. And that's why I resonate with that school and not the other one.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah. No, I'm just still trying to get my head around it. It just seems that it's almost like that I already know about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's so many little bits and pieces that just resonate true for me. It does.
What the church tried to do, and I'm sorry for butting in, it tried to suppress. Now remember, you can't suppress a truth. You can't suppress the truth. What you can do is hide it and hold bits of it down, and misrepresent other bits. You can do that. So, what am I looking at? I'm looking at glittering fragments like a broken window, a broken stained glass window, and you find those shiny pieces of glass everywhere. So what you've got to do is keep looking, and one day you will find the design. And I think that's the task of modern Gnostics.
It's
It's
almost like it's hidden in plain sight as well, with it being scattered through so many different religions out there. And interpretation also. The truth's out there. You just got to interpret it for yourself.
Oh, look, Paul, another complete bullseye. I mean, I don't know if Greg told you. Well, I mean, the truth is out there, and again, it's personal responsibility, it's personal understanding. It's your relationship with the divine energy. Stop waiting for someone to tell you. Find it yourself. Grow up. Don't be afraid. Of course, we start a very strange journey, a wonderful journey the minute that happens. With me, it took me to spiritualism and certain types of occultism. But I can't say I regret a moment of it. It's been an incredible journey.
So I'm quite a positive person. I will always look for the positive in everything and put that out there. And it does seem to be coming back. So, is sort of the vibes that you put out, you'll get back. And I'm a great believer in karma as well. And and it all seems to be tied in to this Gnosticism.
No, I mean, shows like this are incredibly important. It gives people a voice. It allows them to talk about crazy stuff. We can all get on. We're from different backgrounds, different walks of life. We can share these ideas and discuss them. This is pure Gnosticism. What we're doing tonight is Gnosticism, and we're exploring things like personal responsibility, the divine energy at different levels. How this show and the whole paranormal movement, to my mind, is doing something way beyond what it thinks it's doing. No, it's not only bringing back real occultism, real Gnosticism, it's bringing back hope to the world. We're not just bags of chemicals. We're not just little machines. We're not just animals running around that can be controlled by much more powerful people than us. There's something incredible and strong and wonderful and beautiful in all of us. And it's shows like this, and it's every single investigation that takes place in a warehouse, and it's every seance, and it's every single little moment of telepathy that shows there's more to human beings than meets the eye. And I think it's wonderful.
And just before we wrap up the show, Andy Mercer in the chat room, he said, has David met Stephen A... Is that Hollier? Or H-A-O...
Bishop Holler.
Holler, yeah.
No, I have friends in common with him. I never had the privilege of meeting him, but we're on very, very similar lines. Yes, he's a very, very great man. Bishop Dr. Holler is a good guy.
So is he someone you want to meet?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm sure the cosmos will provide. You put that out there.
No doubt about it.
But sadly, we have come to the end of the show. I just want to thank you, David, for showing up on the show. It's been absolutely amazing. Mind blown, really, quite frankly. Yeah, give me a lot to think about, and yeah, it's very interesting, and we'll definitely have to have you on the show again, and we can carry on talking about it. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I'd be very, very honoured. As I say, I'm long in the tooth, and I've been in the paranormal sphere for a very long time. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic and excited by it. You know, even all the rows, it shows there's energy. It shows something's happening, and I'm sure we've got a lot more to talk about.
Oh, we have. We've only touched the surface, really, I think. And you know, I want to thank Kerry as well for joining me on the show tonight.
You're very welcome. It's been an absolute. I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us in the chat room. And hopefully you will all see us next week for what are we doing next week. We've got we're talking power conventions again with Vivian Powell and Sean Cadman next week.
Yeah, that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I know you really want to talk to those two, don't you?
Yeah.
You won't lie.
I'm not going to lie. I really want to talk to those guys.
That's sort of Kerry's catchphrase. I'm not going to lie. So yes, thank you.
That's one thing I don't do.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you everyone for joining me tonight, and have a safe week, and see you all again next week on the Paranormal Concept Show.